My name is Kennedy, and I'm 29 years old. As a finance executive, I've always been the responsible daughter, the one my parents relied on to pay their bills. But last Thanksgiving, everything changed when my father's face turned crimson with rage. "Get out! Paying bills doesn't make you family," he yelled across our turkey dinner. My mother just lowered her eyes and murmured, "You're just jealous of your brother." I laughed, surprising even myself. Then, let him pay the $9,600. Before I tell you how I turned the tables on my family that night, let me know where you're watching from, and hit that subscribe button if you've ever had to stand up to toxic family members. I grew up in a modest neighborhood in suburban Boston where our middle-class lifestyle always seemed to be hanging by a thread. My parents, Frank and Diane, weren't poor by any means, but financial struggles constantly shadowed our home. My father worked in construction, bringing home a decent paycheck when work was steady, but winters in Massachusetts meant lean times. My mother worked part-time as a receptionist at a local dental office, her income barely covering groceries. From my earliest memories, I understood the weight of financial pressure. Dinner conversations centered around bills, budget cuts, and sacrifices. But strangely, these sacrifices never seemed to apply equally to everyone in our household. My brother Jason, 3 years my senior, was the golden child of our family. With his charming smile and easy laugh, he could talk his way out of any responsibility. While I was expected to maintain perfect grades, work after-school jobs, and contribute to household expenses, Jason floated through life on charm and promises. "Your brother has a different path," my mother would say whenever I pointed out the discrepancy. "He's finding himself." Finding himself apparently meant dropping out of community college, cycling through minimum wage jobs, and borrowing money he never repaid. Yet, somehow my parents always found extra funds for whatever Jason needed: a car when he turned 16, bail money when he got caught with marijuana at 19, and rent assistance when he couldn't make payments on his apartment. Meanwhile, I scrubbed floors at a local diner. After school, saved every penny for college, and applied for every scholarship available. By 17, I had enough academic scholarships to attend Boston University, where I majored in finance and graduated with honors. No one from my family attended my graduation ceremony. Jason had a minor fender bender that same day, and my parents spent the afternoon comforting him at the body shop. I landed an entry-level position at a prestigious financial firm, worked 60-hour weeks, and climbed the corporate ladder through sheer determination. By 27, I became the youngest vice president in company history and purchased my own condominium in downtown Boston. My success should have been a source of family pride, but instead it became a wellspring of obligation. "Kennedy makes the big bucks now," my father would tell relatives. "She can afford to help out the family." What started as occasional assistance helping with an unexpected medical bill or a car repair gradually transformed into regular financial support. My parents never directly asked for money. They employed subtle tactics that cut deeper than any direct request. "We might have to skip our medication this month," my mother would sigh during our weekly phone calls. "The heating company is threatening to shut us off," my father would mention casually. Each time I would offer help transferring money from my savings to their account. Each time they would express reluctant gratitude as though accepting my money was a favor to me. And each time I would later discover Jason had received some financial gift from them: a new phone, concert tickets, or a weekend getaway. Over the past 2 years, I had transferred $9,600 to my parents. I kept meticulous records, a professional habit I couldn't shake. $2,300 for their property taxes. $1,800 for my father's dental work. $3,500 for home repairs after a pipe burst. $750 for car insurance when they fell behind. $1,250 for various utility bills. With each payment, a knot of resentment grew within me, tangled with the threads of familial loyalty and obligation. I tried discussing financial boundaries, suggesting my parents create a budget or my brother contribute his fair share. These conversations inevitably ended with accusations. "After everything we've done for you," my father would say, voice tight with manufactured hurt. "This is how you repay us, by bean counting." "Your brother has different circumstances," my mother would add. "You've always been the strong one, Kennedy, the independent one." I began to realize that my independence wasn't celebrated, it was exploited. My success had become a convenience, an open checkbook for a family that viewed my achievements as resources rather than accomplishments. Yet some misplaced sense of duty kept me trapped in this cycle of giving, without receiving even basic appreciation in return. As Thanksgiving approached last year, I found myself wondering how much longer I could maintain this one-sided relationship. Something had to change, but I never imagined how dramatically that change would come, or that it would happen over turkey and cranberry sauce at our family dinner table. Last November, I initially planned to skip our family Thanksgiving altogether. My workload had been crushing with a major client merger requiring late nights and early mornings. The thought of driving to my parents' suburban home, performing the role of dutiful daughter while being subtly reminded of my financial obligations, felt overwhelming. I might not make it this year, I told my mother during our Sunday call. The Parker account is consuming all my time. What followed was a masterclass in emotional manipulation. My mother's voice dropped to a whisper as she described how my father had been looking forward to seeing you and how this might be grandmother's last Thanksgiving with us. She mentioned that Jason was bringing his new girlfriend, Amber, and how the whole family needed to make a good impression. "We're family, Kennedy," she concluded. "Work will always be there, but these moments won't." I acquiesced as I always did. The weekend before Thanksgiving, I spent $300 on groceries preparing gourmet side dishes and an expensive bottle of wine to contribute. I selected a designer outfit and even took a half day off work to arrive early enough to help with preparations. The irony that Jason would likely show up empty-handed late and still receive the warmest welcome wasn't lost on me. When I pulled into my parents' driveway on Thanksgiving morning, I immediately noticed the new patio furniture adorning their front porch. Just 3 weeks earlier, my mother had called in tears about their overdue electric bill, which I promptly paid. Seeing the pristine outdoor set with plush cushions sent a wave of suspicion through me. Inside, more surprises awaited. A new flat-screen television dominated the living room wall. The kitchen boasted gleaming appliances I didn't recognize. For a household supposedly teetering on financial collapse, these upgrades seemed remarkably extravagant. "Do you like our new additions?" my father asked, noticing my wandering gaze. "Got some great Black Friday deals early this year." "They look expensive," I responded carefully. "I thought things were tight after the roof repair." "We manage," he said dismissively. "Sometimes you have to spend money to make your house a home." I bit back a reminder that I had contributed $1,500 to that roof repair just 2 months ago. Instead, I busied myself in the kitchen arranging my gourmet side dishes alongside my mother's traditional offerings. Jason called. My mother announced, checking her phone. "He and Amber are running a bit late. Something about stopping for flowers." Of course he was late. Jason operated on his own timeline consequences, never applying to his actions. I continued chopping vegetables, my knife hitting the cutting board with increasing force. My mother hovered nearby, uncharacteristically nervous. "Amber is such a lovely girl," she volunteered. "From a good family. Her father owns that big car dealership on Route 7. "That's nice," I replied noncommittally. Jason really seems to have found his path with her. They've been talking about the future. The implication hung in the air. Jason, despite his history of irresponsibility, was achieving the traditional milestone of settling down while I remained single, married only to my career. Never mind that I owned property, had a substantial retirement account, and could support myself. In my family's hierarchy of accomplishments, a relationship trumped financial independence. When Jason and Amber finally arrived 2 hours late, the household erupted in activity. My mother fussed over them, while my father helped carry in their minimal contributions a store-bought pie and a bouquet of flowers. No one mentioned their tardiness or how it had delayed our dinner preparations. Amber seemed pleasant enough, if a bit overwhelmed by the effusive welcome. She was pretty in a conventional way, with carefully applied makeup and designer clothes that suggested comfort with spending money. She made polite conversation with me, asking about my job and complimenting my outfit, but I could sense she had already absorbed the family narrative about me, the cold, career-focused sister who didn't understand the importance of relationships. While helping my mother set the table, I noticed a credit card statement left carelessly on the counter. I wouldn't have given it a second glance had a particular purchase not caught my eye, a charge for $4,200 from Brilliant Diamond Imports dated just 2 weeks ago. "What's this?" I asked, pointing to the statement. My mother snatched it away with unusual speed. Nothing important, she said, stuffing it into a drawer. Just some early Christmas shopping. The pieces clicked together when I overheard Jason in the living room whispering to Amber about making their big announcement during dinner. They weren't just bringing a new girlfriend to Thanksgiving, they were planning to announce an engagement. An engagement apparently financed by my parents who couldn't afford their own utility bills but somehow found thousands for a diamond ring. In the kitchen, I confronted my mother directly. "Did you and Dad buy Jason's engagement ring?" Her expression confirmed my suspicion before she spoke. "It was important to him, Kennedy. He wanted to give Amber something special." "While I'm paying your electric bill," the words came out sharper than intended. "That's different," she defended. "This is about Jason's future happiness. Besides, we'll pay you back eventually. Like you've paid back the other $9,600. She flinched at the precise figure evidence that I'd been keeping track. "Family helps family, Kennedy. When you find someone special, we'll do the same for you." I doubted that very much. More likely, by the time I decided to marry, my parents would have drained my savings dry with their endless emergencies. As we finalized dinner preparations, I made a decision. After years of silent compliance, I would address the financial favoritism during dinner. Not accusatory or emotional, but honest and direct. If we were truly family, as they constantly reminded me, then we should be able to have difficult conversations. Little did I know that this decision would detonate a bomb that had been ticking beneath our family's foundation for decades. Our dining room gleamed with holiday perfection. The antique table passed down from my grandmother stretched beneath a crystal chandelier my parents had purchased during more prosperous times. Autumn-colored tapers flickered in silver candlesticks, casting a warm glow over the feast arranged before us. My mother had outdone herself with traditional offerings: a golden brown turkey, fluffy mashed potatoes, swimming in butter sweet potato casserole topped with toasted marshmallows and green beans almondine. My gourmet contributions: truffle roasted Brussels sprouts cranberry sauce with Grand Marnier and a caramelized onion bread pudding, added sophisticated touches that would likely go unappreciated. "Everything looks wonderful," my grandmother commented as we took our seats. For the first 30 minutes, conversation flowed pleasantly. We discussed safe topics: the unusually warm November weather, my grandmother's church activities, and Amber's job teaching second grade. I sipped my wine, responding when addressed, but otherwise observing the family dynamics with newfound clarity. Jason dominated the conversation as usual, embellishing stories about his latest job at a marketing firm where he'd been employed for all of 3 months. My parents gazed at him with undisguised adoration, laughing at his jokes and prompting him for more details. Meanwhile, when I mentioned a major account I'd secured that would likely lead to a substantial promotion, my mother changed the subject to ask if I'd had time to date anyone. Midway through the main course, Jason clinked his glass with his fork, the universal signal for an announcement. My parents exchanged knowing glances, barely containing their excitement. "Everyone, Amber and I have some news." Jason began, reaching for his girlfriend's hand. "Last weekend, I asked this amazing woman to marry me, and for some reason she said yes." Amber extended her left hand, displaying a sizable diamond that caught the candlelight. My parents erupted in celebration, my mother actually squealing with delight. My grandmother clapped her hands together, and even my Uncle Thomas offered hearty congratulations. "We're thinking a June wedding," Amber gushed. "Nothing too elaborate, but special." "And guess what else?" my mother interjected, unable to contain herself. "Your father and I want to give you both a wonderful start. We're paying for your honeymoon in Hawaii." I nearly choked on my wine. A Hawaiian honeymoon would cost thousands, possibly more than the engagement ring itself. Meanwhile, I'd received a voicemail just yesterday from my mother asking if I could lend them $800 for property taxes. "That's incredibly generous," I said, my voice carefully neutral. "Especially given the recent financial challenges you've mentioned." A momentary silence fell over the table. My father recovered first. "Well, some expenses are worth making sacrifices for." "I completely agree," I replied, setting down my fork. "I'm just curious which sacrifices those might be, since I've been covering many of your essential bills." Jason rolled his eyes. "Here we go. Kennedy, the financial wizard, tracking every penny." "Not every penny," I corrected him. "Just the $9,600 I've provided over the past 2 years, while you've contributed nothing." Amber's eyes widened, darting between Jason and my parents. Clearly, she hadn't been informed about the family's financial arrangements. "Kennedy, this isn't appropriate dinner conversation," my mother warned. "Neither is asking me to pay your electric bill while you're planning all expense-paid trips to Hawaii," I countered. "I'm not trying to cause a scene, but I think we need to discuss financial boundaries." My father's face flushed. "You make good money. We sacrificed everything for you kids. What's wrong with helping your family when they need it?" "Nothing's wrong with helping," I agreed. "What's concerning is that it only seems to flow in one direction. I support you, and you support Jason." Jason leaned forward, his charm evaporating. "Not everyone can be Miss Perfect with the fancy degree and big salary. Some of us take longer to find our way." "You've had 14 years since high school to find your way," I pointed out, "and now you're getting married? Shouldn't you be financially stable enough to support yourself and Amber without Mom and Dad's help? Help that I'm indirectly providing." "You've always been jealous of me," Jason accused. "Just because people actually like me and I'm not a workaholic robot." My mother jumped in. "Kennedy, your brother, is establishing himself. His firm sees great potential in him." "And what about the potential you've always seen in me?" I asked, my voice quieter now. "I've worked hard, built a career, achieved financial stability. I've helped whenever you asked. But you've never been as proud of my accomplishments as you are of Jason's smallest efforts." My father pushed his plate away, his expression darkening. "We didn't raise you to keep score or put price tags on family support." "It's not about keeping score," I insisted. "It's about acknowledging a pattern that's been draining me financially and emotionally. I want a healthy relationship with all of you, but that requires honesty and balance." "Balance," my father scoffed. "You think family is some accounting spreadsheet, some business transaction." "No, but it shouldn't be a one-way street either." The tension escalated as I calmly listed specific instances: the roof repair, the dental work, the utility bills, while simultaneously watching my parents fund Jason's lifestyle and now his engagement and honeymoon. With each example, my father grew more agitated until he finally exploded. He slammed his fist on the table, causing the dishes to rattle. "Enough, get out, paying bills doesn't make you family." The room fell silent, the words hanging in the air like shattered glass. Even Jason looked uncomfortable with the outburst. My mother, rather than calming the situation, twisted the knife deeper. "You're just jealous of your brother," she murmured, refusing to meet my eyes. "You always have been." Something broke inside me then, not in a destructive way, but in the way that ice breaks in spring, releasing what had been frozen beneath. I felt an unexpected calm wash over me, a clarity I'd been lacking for years. I laughed softly, surprising everyone at the table, including myself. "Then let him pay the $9,600, I said, my voice steady. "And the next time you need help with bills or emergencies or medical costs, you can call Jason instead." I folded my napkin neatly beside my plate, stood up, and gathered my purse and coat. No one spoke as I walked to the door, not even my grandmother, who watched with sad, understanding eyes. "Happy Thanksgiving," I said, and closed the door behind me. The holiday decorations on neighboring houses twinkled as I walked to my car, their cheerfulness a stark contrast to the storm of emotions I was processing. But beneath the hurt and anger, I felt something unexpected: relief. For the first time in my adult life, I had stated my truth without apology. Whatever happened next, I would face it on my own terms. The 20-minute drive home from my parents' house became a journey through my emotional landscape. Streetlights blurred through tears I hadn't realized were falling. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly my knuckles turned white. Radio Christmas carols created a surreal soundtrack to my unraveling family ties. Yet beneath the pain, a curious lightness spread through my chest. Each mile between me and that Thanksgiving table felt like shedding a weight I'd carried for too long. By the time I reached my condominium building, the tears had stopped, replaced by a sense of grim determination. I kicked off my heels in the entryway, poured a generous glass of wine, and opened my laptop. If this break was happening, I would make it clean and complete. No more half measures or empty boundaries that would inevitably dissolve under emotional manipulation. First, I logged into my banking portal and canceled all automatic payments to my parents' accounts, the monthly $500 for family support that had become an unspoken expectation. Next, I removed them as authorized users on my emergency credit card, which had somehow transformed from genuine emergencies to regular conveniences. I drafted a formal email professional and devoid of accusation, as though addressing business associates rather than family. I itemized every payment I had made over the past 2 years, dates, amounts, and purposes. I explained that while I valued family, I would no longer provide financial support without reciprocal respect and acknowledgement of my contributions. I closed by expressing hope that we might rebuild our relationship on healthier terms, but made clear that financial entanglement would no longer be part of our dynamic. I hesitated before hitting send, my cursor hovering over the button as doubts crept in. Was I overreacting? Would this irreparably damage our relationship? Would my parents face genuine hardship without my assistance? But then I remembered my father's words, "Paying bills doesn't make you family," and pressed send before I could reconsider. Almost immediately, my phone exploded with notifications. Text messages from my mother ranged from confusion. "Did something upset you at dinner?" to guilt trips. "Your father is devastated," to anger after everything we've done for you. My father, less technologically inclined, left voicemails that started with demands for explanation and escalated to accusations of ingratitude. Jason predictably launched the most aggressive campaign. His calls came in rapid succession until I silenced my phone. When I eventually listened to his voicemail, his words were slurred slightly, suggesting he'd continued drinking after I left. "Way to ruin Thanksgiving," he spat. "Always have to make everything about you, don't you? Mom's crying, Dad's furious, and Amber thinks our whole family is dysfunctional now. Thanks a lot, Kennedy." Real mature, storming out like that. No mention, of course, of the fact that I'd been explicitly told to get out. No acknowledgement of the financial realities I'd raised. In Jason's revised narrative, I was already the villain who had disrupted a perfect family gathering with unfounded accusations. I turned off my phone entirely and poured another glass of wine. Sleep evaded me as I replayed the evening's events, questioning if I could have handled things differently. Around 3 a.m, I gave up on rest and sat by my living room window watching the city lights and considering the path forward. By dawn, an unexpected sense of peace had settled over me. The anxiety that had been my constant companion, dread of my parents' calls, fear of their financial emergencies, resentment of Jason's preferential treatment, had receded. In its place was something unfamiliar, the quiet assurance that I had done the right thing, not just for my bank account, but for my self-respect. I powered on my phone to find 27 missed calls and 42 text messages. I scrolled through them without reading, then composed a single group text to my parents. "And Jason, I need some space to process what happened yesterday. I'll reach out when I'm ready to talk. Please respect my boundaries by not contacting me until then." I blocked their numbers immediately afterward. A drastic measure, perhaps, but necessary for my mental health. I couldn't heal if I remained accessible to their manipulations. That morning, I discovered my parents had already begun damage control with the extended family. My cousin Sophia called her voice careful as she asked what had really happened at Thanksgiving dinner. Apparently, my parents' version involved me having a meltdown over Jason's engagement, storming out in a jealous rage because I was still single and bitter. "They didn't mention the money, did they?" I asked, unsurprised. Sophia's pause confirmed my suspicion. "No, they just said you were upset about Jason and Amber's news." I explained the actual situation, the years of financial support, the pattern of exploitation, and the breaking point at dinner. Sophia listened quietly, then sighed. "I'm not entirely surprised," she admitted. "Aunt Diane has borrowed money from my mom too, always for emergencies, that somehow never get resolved. And Uncle Frank has been complaining about being broke since I can remember, but they always have nice things." Her validation helped shore up my resolve. I wasn't imagining things or overreacting. The pattern was real, recognized by others, and my response was justified. The next week brought escalating attempts to breach my boundaries. My parents tried contacting me through colleagues, showing up at my favorite coffee shop, and even leaving packages at my door, family photos, childhood mementos, and guilt-laden letters, reminiscing about how much they had sacrificed for blank. Me. I held firm, focusing on work and seeking support from friends who had witnessed my one-sided relationship with my family over the years. I scheduled an appointment with a therapist who specialized in family dynamics, hoping to understand the patterns that had led us to this breaking point. Meanwhile, word filtered back through mutual connections that my parents were facing genuine financial consequences from my withdrawal. Bills were going unpaid, services were being disconnected. Jason, when approached for help, apparently claimed he was between paychecks and couldn't assist. I felt twinges of guilt but reminded myself this was the reality they had created. Their financial difficulties weren't my creation, they were the natural consequence of years of mismanagement and exploitation. My support had only delayed the inevitable reckoning. Then came the development I never anticipated: the police at my door. After a week of complete silence from my end, the chaos within my family reached new heights. My building's doorman called up one evening to inform me that my parents' utilities had been disconnected and they were without heat during an unseasonably cold November. Though concerned, I reminded myself that they had other options: credit cards, payment plans, or perhaps finally asking Jason to contribute his fair share. Jason, predictably, was nowhere to be found in this crisis. Through mutual acquaintances, I learned he had refused to help, claiming his wedding plans consumed all his available funds. The engagement announcement that had been so celebrated at Thanksgiving was now his excuse for abandoning responsibility. Amber, to her credit, seemed increasingly uncomfortable with the situation, questioning why Jason's sister was expected to support grown adults capable of working and managing their own finances. My mother's calls became increasingly desperate as the second week of silence stretched on. Her voicemails, which I listened to but didn't respond to, evolved from guilt-tripping. "How could you abandon us like this?" to panic. "We don't know what to do without your help." My father, proud and stubborn, maintained his stance that I was the ungrateful one, even as their financial house of cards collapsed around them. The situation escalated dramatically when my father showed up at my office building on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in a client meeting when my assistant interrupted with an urgent message. "There's a man in the lobby claiming to be your father," she whispered. "He's demanding to see you and refusing to leave. Security is asking what you want them to do." My heart pounded as I excused myself from the meeting. In the 10 years I'd worked at the firm, I had never mixed my professional and personal lives. My reputation for composure and professionalism was impeccable. Now my family drama was literally in the lobby, threatening the career I'd built. When I reached the ground floor, the scene was worse than I'd imagined. My father, disheveled and red-faced, was shouting at the security guards who blocked his path to the elevators. "That's my daughter's money," he was yelling. "She owes us after everything we sacrificed." Employees and clients watched the spectacle with undisguised interest. My embarrassment quickly transformed into cold anger. This was a new low, threatening my professional standing to extract financial support. I approached calmly, maintaining a composed expression despite the chaos. "Dad, this is inappropriate. I'm at work." He whirled to face me. "You'll talk to me now, Kennedy. You can't just cut us off without warning." I sent an email clearly explaining my position. I replied quietly. "And this display only confirms I made the right decision. Please leave, before security has to remove you." "Remove me," he scoffed. "I'd like to see them try. I'm not leaving until you give us what you owe." "I don't owe you anything," I stated firmly. "And you're creating a scene at my workplace. This needs to end now." When he refused to leave voluntarily, security had no choice but to escort him out. His parting words, loud enough for the entire lobby to hear, included accusations of theft, abandonment, and the recurring theme that I had always been a cold, calculating disappointment compared to my brother. I returned to my client meeting with a professional smile plastered over my humiliation. Later that afternoon, my boss called me into her office. I braced for reprimand or concern about bringing personal problems to work. Instead, she offered unexpected support. "Kennedy, I've known you for years," she said. "You're one of our most dedicated and drama-free employees. Whatever's happening with your father, I trust your judgment. Do you need any support from us?" Her understanding brought tears to my eyes, the first kindness I'd experienced since the Thanksgiving disaster. I gave her a brief, sanitized version of the situation. She nodded thoughtfully. "Family financial entanglements can be brutal," she said. "My suggestion, speak with our corporate attorney about protection options. If he's willing to make a scene here, he might escalate further." That advice led me to my first appointment with both a therapist and a lawyer in the same week. The therapist helped me understand the dysfunctional patterns that had defined my family relationships for decades. She introduced terms like financial abuse, golden child syndrome, and parentification that gave framework to experiences I'd normalized. "You're not abandoning them," she assured me. "You're establishing healthy boundaries that should have existed all along." The corporate attorney helped me draft cease and desist letters and advised me on protecting my assets from potential claims. "Family members sometimes feel entitled to financial support," he warned. "Protect yourself as you would from any other financial threat." Meanwhile, my parents expanded their campaign against me within our extended family. Aunts, uncles, and cousins received carefully crafted stories about my mental breakdown and abandonment of family obligations. Some believed them unquestioningly. Others, like Sophia, recognized the manipulation and reached out privately to offer support. The most surreal development came in the form of anonymous deliveries. Packages containing my childhood photographs, school awards, and family mementos appeared at my door with notes suggesting I had forgotten what family truly means. Family photos with my face deliberately scratched out, copies of checks I'd written to my parents with blood money scrawled across them in red marker. These attempts at emotional manipulation only strengthened my resolve. Each boundary violation confirmed the toxicity I was trying to escape. 3 weeks after Thanksgiving, the situation reached its most bizarre climax. I returned home from work to find 2 police officers waiting at my door. "Miss Walker, I'm Officer Martinez, and this is Officer Collins. We need to ask you some questions about stolen property." Confusion gave way to disbelief as they explained that my parents had filed a police report claiming I had stolen family heirlooms valued at several $1,000s during my Thanksgiving visit. According to their report, I had taken my grandmother's pearl necklace, my grandfather's pocket watch, and various pieces of sterling silver tableware. "I didn't take anything," I explained, inviting the officers inside. "I left directly after dinner following an argument about financial support I've been providing to my parents." Officer Collins took notes while Officer Martinez asked follow-up questions. Their professional demeanor suggested they weren't entirely convinced by my parents' accusations, but needed to investigate thoroughly. "Do you have any documentation of this financial support you mentioned?" Officer Martinez asked. I pulled out my laptop and showed them the email I'd sent my parents with its detailed accounting of every payment over the past 2 years. I provided bank statements showing the transfers. I even had text messages from my parents explicitly requesting money for various emergencies. This provides important context. Officer Collins commented, photographing some of the documentation with my permission. Family disputes over money often escalate in unexpected ways. The officers left with assurances that they would follow up with my parents. Later that week, Officer Martinez called to inform me that they had determined the report was unfounded. The allegedly stolen items had been discovered in my parents' home shortly after the police visit. "We take false police reports seriously," he said carefully. "Your parents have been warned about potential consequences of filing unfounded reports in the future." The attempted police involvement was the final confirmation that my decision to establish boundaries had been not just justified but necessary. What kind of loving parents would try to have their daughter investigated for theft as revenge for financial independence? Despite the ongoing chaos, I found myself growing stronger each day. Friendships deepened as I invested the emotional energy previously consumed by family drama. My work performance improved without constant interruptions from parental emergencies. I began exploring interests and hobbies long neglected while supporting my family, taking a photography class, joining a hiking group, volunteering at a financial literacy program for young women. The irony wasn't lost on me by cutting ties with my family. I was finally building the full, balanced life they had supposedly wanted for me. But I still carried a small hope that someday we might find a way back to each other, not as financial dependencies, but as genuine family. That possibility seemed remote until an unexpected message appeared in my inbox from the last person I expected to hear from, Amber, my brother's fiancée. 2 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation, my new normal had taken shape. I had settled into a rhythm of self-care and professional focus, my anxiety noticeably diminished without the constant drain of family demands. Though the silence from my immediate family continued, I had reconnected with selected extended relatives who respected my boundaries. Then one ordinary Tuesday, an email arrived from an unfamiliar address with the subject line, From Amber, Jason's fiancé. Please don't ignore. Curiosity overrode caution, and I opened it during my lunch break. Kennedy, I hope this reaches you. Your family doesn't know I'm contacting you. Things have gotten worse since Thanksgiving and I need to talk to you. Can we meet somewhere private? I have information you should know. Amber. My instinct was to dismiss this as another manipulation tactic, possibly with Jason's knowledge, but something in the direct, simple language suggested authentic concern. After careful consideration, I suggested meeting at a quiet cafe across town where my family was unlikely to appear. Amber arrived looking nothing like the confident woman from Thanksgiving dinner. Dark circles shadowed her eyes, and her normally perfect manicure was chipped and neglected. She glanced nervously around the cafe before sliding into the booth across from me. Thank you for meeting me, she began, hands wrapped tightly around her coffee mug. I wouldn't blame you if you'd ignored my message. I almost did, I admitted. What's this about, Amber? She took a deep breath. After you left Thanksgiving, everything fell apart in ways I never expected. At first, everyone was angry at you. Your parents painted you as the villain who abandoned them out of jealousy. Jason was furious that you'd ruined our engagement announcement. She paused, gathering courage. But then the financial reality hit. Your parents couldn't pay their bills. They expected Jason to step up since you weren't helping anymore. When he couldn't or wouldn't, they turned on him too. The perfect son suddenly wasn't so perfect. Amber described how my parents' initially warm acceptance had transformed into pointed questions about Jason's income, career prospects, and ability to provide for a family. The wedding plans became a battleground, with my parents insisting on an extravagant celebration they couldn't afford while simultaneously complaining about financial hardship. Then I found out about the money, she continued, her voice dropping. Not just what you told us at Thanksgiving, the full extent of it. Jason had been telling me your parents occasionally helped him with expenses. The truth is, they've been supporting him almost entirely using the money you gave them. She showed me text messages between Jason and my parents discussing how to handle Kennedy and ensure the cash flow continued. They had strategized about which emergencies would most effectively prompt my assistance, even fabricating some entirely. That's why I'm here, Amber concluded. I can't marry into this. Jason refuses to take financial responsibility and your parents enable him. But they've been spreading horrible lies about you to everyone who will listen. It isn't right. Her revelation, while painful, wasn't entirely surprising. I had suspected some level of coordination in their financial requests. The confirmation simply solidified my resolve to maintain boundaries. What I didn't expect was what happened next. Amber's disclosure apparently triggered a cascade of family interventions. My grandmother, disturbed by the conflicting stories she'd heard, organized a family meeting with my mother's siblings. For the first time, the full financial picture was laid bare, including my years of support and my parents' misrepresentation of the situation. My Uncle Thomas, my mother's older brother, and a retired accountant, emerged as an unexpected advocate. He called me directly after the family meeting. Kennedy, I owe you an apology, he said gruffly. I had no idea what Frank and Diane were doing. None of us did. We've been getting bits and pieces of their version for years. How successful you were, but how you never helped the family. Now we know that was a lie. Uncle Thomas detailed the family's shock upon learning about my consistent financial support. My parents had apparently been playing similar games with other relatives, borrowing money while claiming I refused to help. The family had seen my professional success and assumed I was withholding assistance out of selfishness, never knowing I was the primary support system all along. The family's united on this, Thomas assured me. Frank and Diane need financial counseling, and a reality check, not endless bailouts. And Jason needs to stand on his own feet for once. This family intervention coincided with my parents facing the full consequences of their financial mismanagement. Without my regular contributions, they had fallen behind on mortgage payments, utilities, and credit cards. Their attempts to extract money from other relatives now fell on deaf ears. Jason, confronted with the expectation of actual responsibility, withdrew further, his engagement to Amber hanging by a thread. Then came the health scare that might once have immediately drawn me back into the fold. My father, under mounting stress, experienced chest pains and was hospitalized overnight for observation. My mother called repeatedly, leaving tearful messages about how they needed me in this family emergency. In the past, I would have dropped everything and rushed to the hospital checkbook in hand. This time, after consultation with my therapist, I sent a brief, compassionate text expressing concern for my father's health but maintaining my boundaries. I suggested they contact Jason for immediate support. This measured response, neither cold rejection nor complete capitulation, represented genuine growth on my part. I could acknowledge concern without assuming responsibility for the situation. My father was released the following day with a diagnosis of stress-induced anxiety rather than a cardiac event. The health scare, however, seemed to trigger something in my mother. For the first time since Thanksgiving, she reached out not with demands or accusations, but with something resembling accountability. Her letter arrived by mail, handwritten on stationery she had saved for special occasions. Kennedy, the past months have forced me to confront uncomfortable truths about our family and my role in creating the current situation. Your father's health scare brought clarity I've been avoiding. I realize now that we've treated you unfairly for years, expecting financial support while giving little recognition or gratitude in return. We directed our praise and attention to Jason while taking your assistance for granted. When you finally stood up for yourself at Thanksgiving, we responded with anger instead of understanding. I'm not asking for money. I'm not even asking for forgiveness yet. I'm simply acknowledging that you deserved better from your parents. The way forward isn't clear to me, but I know it must begin with this truth. Your mother, Diane. The letter wasn't perfect. It contained no specific plan for change, no detailed accountability for past actions. But it represented something I hadn't seen from either parent before the admission that my perspective had validity. It was a small opening in what had seemed an impenetrable wall of denial. After discussing the letter with my therapist, I decided to respond with cautious optimism. I wrote back acknowledging her message and expressing willingness to eventually rebuild our relationship not as financial dependencies, but as family members with mutual respect and clear boundaries. This exchange marked the first step toward possible reconciliation, though I harbored no illusions about the difficulty of the path ahead. Decades of dysfunctional patterns wouldn't disappear with one letter or conversation. Real change would require sustained effort, professional guidance, and fundamental shifts in expectations. As the 3-month mark since Thanksgiving approached, I found myself in a position I could never have imagined when I walked out of my parents' house that November evening. I was financially secure, emotionally stronger, and surrounded by authentic relationships. The chains of obligation and guilt that had bound me for years had been broken, not by my family's choice, but by my own refusal to continue the damaging pattern. Whether my family would ultimately be part of my healthier future remained uncertain. But for the first time since childhood, that uncertainty didn't fill me with dread. I had discovered that I could stand firmly in my own worth, with or without their validation. 6 months after the Thanksgiving confrontation that shattered our family's facade, I stood once again on my parents' front porch. The spring sunshine warmed my shoulders as I took a steadying breath and rang the doorbell. This visit wasn't a return to old patterns, but a carefully considered step in a new direction. The months following my mother's letter had brought gradual halting progress. My parents had begun financial counseling, a condition I had set for resuming contact. Jason, faced with actual consequences for his irresponsibility, had initially doubled down on blaming me before reluctantly acknowledging his role in the family dysfunction. Amber had postponed their wedding indefinitely, insisting on evidence of changed behavior before proceeding with marriage plans. Most significantly, we had started family therapy, not with the expectation of immediate harmony, but as a commitment to honest communication with professional guidance. Our first session had been painful, with my father initially resistant to examining his behavior, and my mother tearfully admitting to enabling both my father's financial mismanagement and Jason's perpetual dependency. I thought being a good mother meant making everything easy for my children, she had confessed during our third session. For Jason, that meant removing obstacles and solving his problems. For Kennedy, it meant expecting her to handle everything without complaint because she seemed so capable. The therapist had helped us identify the roles we had each played in maintaining our dysfunctional system. My father as the authority who couldn't be questioned. My mother as the emotional manipulator, Jason as the entitled child, and me as the responsible rescuer. Breaking these patterns required conscious effort from all of us with varying degrees of commitment. My father struggled the most with our new dynamic. Decades of unquestioned authority made him bristle at the therapist's gentle challenges. His progress came in fits and starts genuine insights, followed by retreats into defensiveness. The heart scare had shaken him, though, creating small openings for change. During one pivotal session, he had finally acknowledged the unfairness of the financial burden placed on me. "I told myself it was different because you could afford it," he admitted gruffly. "The truth is, we expected more from you because you never disappointed us like Jason did. It wasn't fair." This acknowledgement, however belated, had been crucial to my willingness to consider rebuilding our relationship. Not because it erased the past, but because it demonstrated the capacity for growth I had doubted existed. A formal financial agreement had replaced the previous pattern of emergency requests and guilt-induced transfers. My parents had created their first real budget at age 62 and 60, with my Uncle Thomas helping monitor their progress. I had agreed to contribute a modest amount toward their healthcare costs, not out of obligation, but as a conscious, boundaried choice. Jason's journey proved more complicated. Initially, he had expected the family reconciliation to restore his privileged position. When that didn't happen, he had cycled through anger, self-pity, and eventually halting steps toward maturity. He had found a steadier job, begun contributing to household expenses when visiting our parents, and even repaid a small portion of what he had previously borrowed. "I always resented how easily everything seemed to come to you," he confessed during a rare moment of vulnerability. "I told myself you were just lucky, or that Mom and Dad pressured you more. I never wanted to admit that you simply worked harder and made better choices." This tenuous progress had led to today's visit, a family dinner that would serve as a test of our new boundaries and communication patterns. Not Thanksgiving with its emotional baggage, just an ordinary Sunday meal where we would practice being together differently. My mother opened the door, her smile cautious but genuine. "Kennedy, I'm so glad you came." The house looked different somehow. The expensive electronics and furniture that had appeared during times of claimed financial hardship had been replaced with more modest alternatives. My father later explained they had sold many luxury items to pay down debt, a concrete sign of changing priorities. Dinner was simpler than the elaborate Thanksgiving feast, a homemade lasagna salad and garlic bread rather than an extravagant spread. The conversation held moments of awkwardness, but also flashes of authenticity previously rare in our family gatherings. When my mother mentioned a leaking roof and my father's plans to repair it himself to save money, I felt the old tension rise. Was this a veiled request for financial help? But then my father added, "I've been watching tutorials online and Thomas is going to help. No sense paying someone else when I can learn to do it properly." This small moment represented significant change, addressing problems directly rather than manipulating others to solve them. Similar moments accumulated throughout the evening, not erasing the past, but suggesting possibility for the future. As months became a year, our family dynamics continued evolving. The transformation wasn't movie perfect or complete. We still had difficult moments, disagreements, and occasional retreats into old patterns. But the foundation had shifted from exploitation to emerging respect. When Thanksgiving approached again, I felt the familiar anxiety rise. Could we navigate this loaded holiday without reopening old wounds? We opted for neutral territory, gathering at a restaurant rather than my parents' home. The symbolism wasn't lost on any of us. This was literally and figuratively a new table. Jason attended with Amber. Their relationship stabilized but changed. They had postponed their wedding indefinitely, focusing instead on building financial stability and healthier patterns. Amber had become an unexpected ally in maintaining our family's new boundaries, gently redirecting conversations when they veered toward old dynamics. As we finished our meal, my father raised his glass in an unexpected toast. "To Kennedy," he said, his voice gruff with emotion, "for having the courage to demand better from all of us, even when we fought her every step of the way." The acknowledgement brought tears to my eyes, not because I needed his validation, but because it represented how far we had come. A year earlier, such recognition would have been unimaginable. Later, walking to our cars, my mother linked her arm through mine. "I realize now that the strongest family ties aren't based on financial dependence or obligation," she said quietly. "They're built on respect and mutual support." Her insight captured the fundamental lesson of our family's journey. The relationships worth preserving aren't those that drain us in the name of loyalty, but those that recognize and honor our individual worth. My own healing journey continues with ongoing therapy helping me establish healthy boundaries in all relationships, not just family ones. I've discovered that the skills developed through standing up to my parents have served me well professionally and personally, allowing me to advocate for my worth without guilt or apology. Most importantly, I've learned that sometimes walking away isn't abandonment, but an act of self-respect that creates the possibility for genuine change. By refusing to participate in damaging patterns, I offered my family a choice: evolve or lose me. Their decision to evolve, however, imperfectly opened the door to a relationship based on mutual respect rather than exploitation. The family table I now choose to sit at isn't determined by blood, but by mutual respect. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't blind support, but having the courage to demand better. That Thanksgiving disaster became the foundation for the most honest relationship my family has ever had. If you're struggling with similar family dynamics, remember your worth isn't measured by how much you give, but by how much you respect yourself enough to expect fairness. Has anyone else had to set difficult boundaries with family members? Share your experience in the comments below. And if this story resonated with you, please like, subscribe, and share with someone who might need to hear it today. Thank you for listening to my journey. May your own boundaries be respected and your relationships be balanced.